Welcome back to The Drive with Bob and Jeff. Happy to be joined now by Jewel. She'll be at the Orpheum Theater coming up on Monday, the 26th, performing at 7 o'clock. And Jewel, one thing that reading your bio and just getting to know a little bit more about you, you have packed a lot of life into your years. Tell us about your drive, your ambition, because that's really what stood out to me.
Yeah, I grew up in Alaska on a homestead. My family were immigrants that lived off the land in Alaska. So I was raised in a saddle barn with no electricity and no running water, but a lot of music. My grandmother had taught everybody to sing, so all my aunts and uncles play and write and sculpt and draw and paint. And I was raised in that very creative environment. I had a difficult relationship with my dad and moved out when I was 15, and I just started making a way on my own since that age. And I always wanted to figure out how to be happy. You know, happiness isn't taught in every household, and I wondered if it was learnable or teachable. And that set me on this lifelong path of writing and taking notes and seeing how I was doing. And, you know, it's been an amazing road. I ended up homeless at 18 because I wouldn't have sex with a boss, and he wouldn't give me my paycheck. And so I was living in my car, and then my car got stolen, and I was homeless for a year, and I was writing songs to make myself feel better. And I got discovered completely on accident. And when I got discovered, I knew my number one job was to still be a happy, whole human. And my number two job was to be a musician. And that's something I really try to stay true to. I have, gone years between records, changed genres, continued to educate myself on how to solve for anxiety and panic attacks and PTSD. I had a lot of trauma and continue to learn to be a happier person, today than I was yesterday. And it's been a thrill. I've been able to make a living doing something I love. I've been able to keep my word to myself of learning to create a harmonious and happy life for myself, and to amazingly take people through the journey and help them with their journey through music. So it's been an incredible ride.
Well, Joel, when you were in San Diego and you were discovered, of course, and Atlantic Records comes to talk to you, how does that turn into being hooked up with mentors like Bob Dylan and Neil Young to help on your career at that age?
My record was going nowhere fast. I was a folk singer at the height of grunge. I was a girl at the height of an all-male dominated scene. I was touring in front of the Ramones and goth bands like Bauhaus and Hole. And it was brutal. I was on stage by myself, but I just kept doing what I was doing. And my first record was considered a failure. My label asked me to go make a second record because we were pretty much giving up on the first one. And then Bob Dylan asked me to tour with him. So I left the studio and went and toured with him. And he just really believed in me. He never meets the opening act. He never talks to them, never watches them. And he heard I was kicking people out of his shows. I don't like people talking when I sing. And I was really, even though I was a kid and nobody knew me, I was like, if you want to talk, go outside and talk. If there's three of you left, I will sing for three of you. I was always like that. And so I was kicking people out of his shows. I was like, you can come back in on Bob's on today. And I guess he got a kick out of that and wanted to meet me. And he ended up just mentoring me, going over my lyrics, giving me books, giving me CDs. I was like, you know what? If Bob Dylan believes in me, screw everybody else. And he and then Neil Young after that really just continued to imprint upon me that being a singer-songwriter, you have a different onus. You have a debt to humanity. You don't have a debt to hits. And, they were both just like, keep touring live, keep doing what you do, and if it gets on the radio, it gets on the radio. And luckily, it did end up getting on the radio, and I ended up doing really well. But I never thought it was the end-all, say-all. I didn't think I'd be, the most famous person forever. I wanted to be a songwriter forever. So that's what I focused on.
Our guest is Jewel. She'll be in Wichita at the Orpheum Theater on the 26th at 7 o'clock. Jack Oliver with us. You talked about the rocky upbringing, the rocky youth that you had, and then in 1995, you put out an album called Pieces of You that was a mega hit, a bunch of top 10 hits, was on the Billboard 200 charts for 2 years. After that youth that you had and your struggle to find some footing in the music industry, what was your reaction to having this incredible album and all this fame and accolades that came with that record?
A lot of it was an amazing gift, having money for health insurance, for food, for a house, having those needs covered meant the world to me. It also meant the world to me that I made a very authentic record. I didn't pretend to be somebody I wasn't, and I was accepted. for who I was. So that was validating in a genuine way, not like in an inauthentic way of like, oh, the applause makes me happy. It was like I just laid my soul out, and people are just like me. You know, it was a really wonderful experience. But the level of fame was quite difficult for me, from my personality, for how I'm wired. I'm actually pretty shy, and once I was on the cover of Time magazine and I couldn't cross the street, I couldn't use the restroom, you couldn't go shopping. That wasn't my gig, you know. And so I actually did kind of radical things. I started slowing my career down. I took years between records to kill momentum, which again, no artist does. But this isn't a psychologically friendly job. It's constant output. There's constant people wanting you to just do and move and tour. And that's why you see so many artists have psychological breakdowns. And for me, coming up with tools as a homeless kid to get off of this survive mode, I had to develop a whole new toolkit of solutions to thrive in an environment. So I don't self-implode. So I didn't revert to unhealthy habits I learned as a child. And I had to do it at a human pace, and I had to have that be a real job. And that's why I took years between records. And what's interesting now is at 40, when I got divorced, I realized all the tools that I developed and created when I was homeless and throughout my career actually was a valuable curriculum. And a neuroscientist actually proves why they do rewire your brain. They're simple 3-minute exercises. And I posted them on a nonprofit website I created called jewelneverbroken.com. And so anybody struggling with anxiety that wants to learn how to neurologically very simply rewire your brain and build a habit out of happiness can go on there. And the community is amazing. So that's what I was doing. And now I'm actually making another record because I do see another gap between where culture is and what culture is being reflected back to them through the arts. And part of it is just having heart and authenticity and being honest about what you're actually going through. And why I like this Christmas tour is, again, my whole family gets to be with me. I never have been able to be around my family for the holidays, and now my son gets to tour with me and my family. But we get to do a really authentic, heartfelt show. And the handmade aspect is because my dad, we were raised without money, and so we made gifts for one another. And so my dad's making things to sell by hand out in the lobby. My son is making bath bombs. I made jewelry. I just started a little jewelry line with my best friend, songlinesbyjewel.com. If anybody wants to go on and do the Christmas shopping, we'd really appreciate it. But we'll be selling all of our handmade things out in the lobby.
Well, it's going to be a fun show because, like, say, you're bringing your family out, and your family has turned into some famous people too, Jewel.
They have. Yeah, they have a hit show called Alaska, The Last Frontier that chronicles how I was raised being a homesteader. And, yeah, my family's really doing well. I'm excited for them.
Jewel is with us. Again, she'll be in Wichita on the 26th at the Orpheum Theater. Interesting, again, you do so many things. You do acting. You're darn funny, if I can say so. You're also involved or have been involved in a project with John Carter Cash that's finishing some of Johnny Cash's songs that he was not able to get out during his life. Tell us about that project, if you don't mind, because I'm fascinated by the opportunity to get to work in the Johnny Cash realm. I
was asked to play June Carter Cash in a movie about her life for Lifetime called Ring of Fire. And I met John Carter during that. I actually had met John Carter years ago. I opened for June and Johnny at the Royal Albert Hall in England years ago. And so to be asked to portray her in a movie was really amazing. And then getting to know John Carter a bit, their son. And so he came to me a couple years later, and he's like, my dad has all these lyrics that were never turned into songs. Some of them are poems, some of them are just thoughts. Would you like to do a couple of them as songs? And I couldn't say yes fast enough, of course. Who thinks they get to do a co-write with Johnny Cash? It's the coolest thing in my. I'm like, I wrote a song with Johnny Cash. Yeah.
Yeah, really.
Big deal.
Well,
yeah, a project called Forever Words, which people can find online.
So how many of those songs did you help with?
I wrote 2, and I think 1 is on the record. I think everybody got 2, and then they ended up picking 1 of each for the album.
All right, Jewel. Well, we appreciate your time. It's going to be a great show coming up on the 26th of this month at the Orpheum Theater, 7 o'clock. We wish you the best of luck. You have a fascinating story and had a wonderful career, and congratulations on everything you've been able to accomplish.
Well, thanks. I really appreciate it. The shows right after Thanksgiving are always the slowest. I hope people come out and get to hear us. It's really a fun show.
You'll have a great crowd. Thanks again, Jewel.
Thanks. Bye.